right now. So anyway, as I'm watching this show last night, I couldn't sleep at 4 a.m. It's Mythbusters, and they're talking about, could a drone kill you? That's the myth that was out there. Because you remember the show Mythbusters, they would take a myth and then recreate it to see if it could be done. But they took a heavy lift camera drone and one that had carbon fiber blades, and they made a human neck simulant with like, blood, their replicate of blood going through veins in a flesh material. They flew the copter into with and they were doing it with like small, like the Mavics and the smaller consumer drones. And this would have been like a 5-year ago episode. So drones obviously have advanced hugely.
Immensely.
So they took a camera drone with, and the consumer were just bopping off. I mean, it wasn't causing any problem. They took a carbon fiber heavy lift camera drone. It cut right into the guy's neck, the simulant's neck, and started spurting. I mean, just like spurting right into the jugular.
Wow.
It was kind of scary. So with that, Doug, why don't you introduce our guests?
There you go. Well, hey there, hi there, ho there, out in spray wash land. Glad to see people starting to hop on now. But anyhow, tonight we're going to talk a little bit about drone insurance and who needs it, why you need it, we'll talk some about coverages and limits and probably get into costs and all that kind of stuff. So be sure to hit your questions and try to get them all answered and hit the likes up, the thumbs up, or whatever that whole thing is, right? And we'll go from there. But our guest tonight is Miss Nicole Royer. We did an interview with her not too long ago, and thought it would be great to have her on the podcast and just kind of chit chat a little bit about some of that stuff. So Miss Nicole, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you work for, what you do, how you do, all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, I'm currently in Southern California. I work for BWI Aviation Insurance. So we specialize in all aviation insurance. And then I am the drone specialist on our team. So I work strictly with drone insurance in every account that comes through I touch. I have some help, but I specialize in drone insurance.
So I'm curious, just to kick us off and get us started here. When you travel from, California into the United States, do you have to use your visa or anything like that?
You would think, right?
I do that all the time, right?
It's we're almost there.
Yeah. It is. Anyhow, so what do you think? Let's start it this way. What do you think is the biggest? I got a great question. It's right there, and I just can't get it out. The biggest misconception with drone insurance that's out there today.
I think the biggest thing is a lot of people don't think they need insurance, drone insurance. So if you're going to be operating commercially, you should have insurance. And most job sites you on are going to require it. So it's needed. If you fly recreationally, that's great. And a lot of people think, oh, it's this little thing, I don't need it. You're at risk. Like if your drone hits someone or causes damage, you are responsible. So drone insurance is not all that expensive when you look at the risk that could happen. I mean, you have this aircraft that is zooming around and it can cause damage.
We had talked about during the interview, we'd kind of gone over some numbers and all that. And I never thought to ask, and you may or may not know right off the top of your head, but if I just have like a little DJI thing that I'm using for recreational purposes, would you happen to have some sort of a figure as to what something like that would cost?
Kind of ballparking on the current market right now. Now, the market can change depending on what's going on with the market, how many claims have been coming in. But currently your bare bones for liability only, 500,000, you're looking 450, you could $1 million, you're probably in the, 550 range, depending on how many drones you have. That's one drone for the year. So, you look at it for over the year period, that's really inexpensive to have that coverage if something were to happen. And right, that's what it's for.
550?
550, yeah, for about $1 million liability, one drone.
and that's for a non-commercial use.
That's commercial use. Yeah.
Okay.
So that,
commercial,
yeah,
wow, that's
yeah.
ridiculous.
So, you know,
Yeah.
it will go up, you know, if you have a higher risk, if you're flying heavier drones. So, you know, that's the smaller drones, but that's kind of where you're starting. If you're adding other endorsements for agricultural, you could use chemical liability. That's going to increase. So looking at bare bones, just a drone, 55 pounds or less, that's what you're looking at. So it's not too bad. It's worth it.
You know, we have a friend, Jacob, that he's been going through some issues and surgeries and all that kind of stuff. I miss Jacob coming on here and telling me how great my hair is. I just thought I would tell you that. Not that you're going to care, but that everybody, you know, anyhow, I miss Jacob being on here. Anyhow, so shout out to Jacob. He's probably, I think he's in the hospital right now.
I talked to him yesterday, and he got admitted again and was going through some surgeries, and yeah, he's doing well. So
yeah. Didn't mean to interrupt, but I had to throw that out there. So anyhow,
yeah.
So, you know, on this, Nicole, explain to me. And Doug, I think I sent this to Doug, but I work for some attorneys as well as some witness things, and Doug and I both, you know, we've written some classes regarding what should be done in the industry, how to take care of properties. We've kind of set some standards as to how washing should be done. I was reviewing someone's insurance policy the other day for a court case, and I was surprised to see their insurance policy, their general liability policy, specifically exclude any damage from a drone. I mean, and it spelled it out. It was literally an exemption drone clause that was a separate rider to that whole policy.
That's also the same thing with maritime, Ray. You're not, it's, if you read through the policy, most of them will exclude maritime operations as well. And Ms. Nicole can fill in all the blanks on that.
Yeah. But yeah, how would drone insurance work with general liability in that scenario, where, so is this kind of going to be an overlay, I mean, a separate policy? Whereas if okay, I try, and I don't mean to put you on the spot because I know you and Doug were talking earlier, and I wasn't, but let's say that I spray something on a building that causes a fire, and my general liability says, well, no, you sprayed that while you're using a drone. We're not going to cover that. Is that something that drone insurance would cover?
It can, yeah. So it can, depending on, most cleaning material is, you know, eco-friendly, right? There's a lot of rules where it's not going to cause, but you can always add an endorsement for chemical liability. So that's what's going to cover you. So that's something that you want to, if you're spraying something unique or different, you want to ask your agent or carrier, hey, do you offer a chemical liability endorsement? And we do it for a lot of the agriculture drones are spraying chemicals to either, you know, for crop dusting, and they're using chemicals too for, you know, weed killing and things like that, where they need that extra drift coverage or anything like that. But that would fall under the chemical liability endorsement. So that's your general business liability, your CGL policy will exclude aviation in general, all aircraft. It's not going to cover a helicopter. It's not going to cover airplane. It's not going to cover a drone. So that's where you need to go in and get a separate policy that covers the drone. And our drone policy is only going to cover the drone. So it's not going to cover your business. So that's where I think we get a lot of people, they'll come and get a drone policy when they're starting out, and they are under the impression that, well, I have insurance, I'm covered for everything. Right. No, that's not the case. You're covered for your drone and drone operation. So if you're spraying something out of your drone, you can add that chemical liability for overspray, or if that, whatever you're spraying causes damage, we would want to add it that way. But if you just get a basic policy without chemical liability, it's not going to cover if the chemical used causes a fire or damage to the building.
Well, and this, I'm going to get into this question that's here, and kind of go down a little rabbit hole a little bit. But and we don't know who this is. I'm sorry. Again, for those of you watching out there, we don't know. There's several things that we don't see and get to see. So If we're not answering your questions, it's because you're on one of the feeds that we don't see it on, and we apologize for that. But so this one here coming through as Facebook user, and that one says our general liability provider said if we use a drone to wash, they will drop us. Who should we reach out to for coverage? So before I get into that with Ms. Royer, I want to talk about something real quick, and that is if you're that would be a common thing to have happen where, because they don't cover the drone side of it, just like she was saying. So you have to have a separate drone policy. And one of the things that I've been kind of teaching, preaching, kind of a thing is if you're going to have a wash company and then you're going to turn around and buy a drone, I think that you talk to your lawyer, your CPA, whatever, but I think you might be better to start a separate company. Like, let's just say, for example, I'm still Cajun Soft Wash, and then I add on, I get another company, Cajun Drone Wash, and then take, the two companies work hand in hand. One invoices the other, kind of thing. That way I can get a general liability policy on the drone side and not necessarily affect that. What do you think about that, Ms. Royer? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's one way of going about it. But at the end of the day, you still want to make sure that new business is covered under the CGL policy. So, and that's not uncommon, right? Drones are still new and scary to a lot of insurance companies. They know that there's a risk there, and some companies don't want to deal with it at all, regardless, right? So that happens where you have you're going to start a drone operation business, and your current CGL policy is like, well, if you do anything related with a drone at all, we're going to drop you. Well, they really shouldn't do that, right? Because you're going to have your policy and it's going to strictly exclude drones. And then you're going to have to get a second policy that's an aviation policy that is specifically for drones. And that will cover the drone. And then the CGL is going to cover everything else. Now, there's still carriers out there who are afraid. What I really would recommend is finding a new carrier who can, who's going to cover you. And they're going to require, like, okay, you're going to have a drone business. You have to have drone insurance as well. We'll cover you for the business side, right? Cleaning, all you guys cleaning, you're going to have other equipment than just a drone, pressure washers, generators, hoses, other vehicles, other equipment that might fall under the CGL policy, but would not fall under the drone policy. So it's very common. You're going to have those two. And there are carriers out there who will write that. My recommendation is in your area, go on Google and research brokers. Find a broker for your CGL that, is not going to exclude that, because they're out there.
Over in the comments, we're seeing some people, Gene and Stephen, are kind of saying the same thing. Is so how the two policies work together, drone versus cleaning. And then Stephen made the comment of, I see insurance companies pointing fingers and trying to put the blame on one another's policies out there. Mm-hmm. So,
and that happens. And why the policies, they're very specific, right? What they're going to cover and what they're excluded. And more so is what's excluded is what you need to look at in your policy. And it really, insurance companies can point the fingers, but at the end of the day, if it's not excluded, it's typically included. So you want to really check out your exclusions. And like you had mentioned earlier, was they're going to lay it out very crystal clear, black and white. Drones are excluded from a CGL policy. Right. So there should be no finger pointing, right? And the drone policy, if it's a drone related claim, they're going to pay out. There's no questions. They're, on the drone. Now, when there's questions, if you have a claim of using your handheld pressure washer, that's not going to fall under your aviation claim. That's when the aviation company is going to go, no. You got to go to your other insurance company.
I think that really does bring up a great question. And I think we're there on it, but I liken it to years ago. I think it was Hurricane Katrina came through, and there was a building, and the roof blew off the building, and water damage everywhere. So it also flooded in that area. And there was a fight between the insurance companies because the one insurance company says, we're not paying, this is flood damage. And then the flood company says, we're not paying because this is from the roof blowing off. Obviously there was floodwater. So, they had to wrangle a little bit, get lawyers and all that kind of stuff. So going back to, just because I'm still not clear here on it, if you're flying your drone for the purpose of pressure washing, and it's up there and it's doing its thing. And not that you break a window or anything like that, but your solution runs down, gets into a receptacle or a security camera, burns out the security camera, causes a fire, whatever the case may be. Would that be covered under the drone policy because the drone is cleaning at the time?
It should, yeah. That should be a liability claim, right? The cause was from the drone, the use of the drone. So that would be under the drone policy, correct?
Gotcha.
Okay. I
And
mean,
again,
and I see that probably actually happening. Believe it or not, I mean, more than you would expect. You know, security cameras up on the fourth and fifth floor of buildings. You know, I had a great laugh in one of our classes. We've actually got a picture of one of those Honeywell clamshell cases, you know, and asked me how much one of those cameras that cost, you know, about 6 years ago that got in there. It was $1,800. Ask me how I know. But, you know, our solution got into this waterproof clamshell case somehow. And we had to, you know, we wound up replacing the camera on that.
Well, and Stephen, to answer your question here, they don't, right? That's kind of, I guess, a pick and choose. Like if you're out there and you're spraying with your drone and you know, something does happen, or if you're not, yeah, sure, you can make up whatever you want. But I mean, if you're covered on both sides, it shouldn't matter. You just turn in the one that, you know,
which one makes more sense to file a claim against.
And in reality, it might be which one has the lower deductible. You know?
Our endorsement for chemical use may possibly overspray a person our underwriter refers to as pollution coverage. Interesting. That would be pollution coverage if a person got oversprayed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there should be areas that are barricated and, you know, in taped off,
absolutely,
so people can't get there.
Yeah,
but things
I
can happen. Wind happens.
Not be as so the problem is when you get up high, right? Whether you're using a lift, a bosun's chair, a swing stage, or a drone, when you get up high, that wind can carry that several blocks away. And if you're downtown somewhere, there's no protecting everybody from that instance. Then it becomes about management.
Yeah, that chemical liability endorsement will come in for overspray, drift spray, right? And depending on the chemicals you're using, there are some that are excluded, and that's something you can add. I personally, everyone on the cleaning side has always opted out because they're always using like a biodegradable, eco-friendly for whatever environmental purposes their city or municipality has. Not saying that other chemicals can't be used, but it's just not very common on the drone washing side. But you have that endorsement if you're using harsher chemicals that you can add.
So would bleach under normal circumstances be covered?
It would not be covered. Anything even water coming out of there, if it's spraying out, it's
anybody that's soft washing should get the chemical endorsement, period.
Yeah, the chemical endorsement is any chemical liquid that's sprayed out of the drone. Now, if you're spraying the building, you cause damage to the building because of the drone, you're covered. But for that drift or the chemical harms something, it harms the building, it harms a person, it harms anything, you want that chemical liability.
Gets on their Armani suit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see. That's the question we already answered. Sorry about that. So in looking at the whole drone insurance realm, we talked a little bit before about the rates and I don't know if you remember what those rates are, but can we go over that again? We can talk about that.
Yeah, we could go over that. I don't have the rates on top, pulled up right now, but we can go over. You remember? Perfect.
Well, this is what I remember. We were talking about basically if it were a 40-ish or either, I think it was $40,000 or $45,000-ish drone, and the I think it was a $1 million policy that the general liability side was only at about $1,000 a year, because I remember saying that is stupid cheap. I mean, somebody that's going to fly one of these drones and does not get that policy is just about as ignorant as they come, in my opinion. Now, if you want to cover your drone as well, that's where it gets expensive. And I think we had talked about, it was like almost around $5,000 for the year to cover that $45,000 drone. So total policy would have been about $6,000 for the year ish. So 4 to 6 ish, I think, or 4 to 6,500 ish, I think, is where that came in at. And I can tell you, I think especially, some of the drone manufacturers, they have their own, I'll call it a policy, right? Where they say, Apelix is a great example, where Apelix has an elite care program. And if you purchase the elite care program, which is an extra $5,000 for the year, lo and behold, the drone insurance is about $5,000 anyhow. The first crash, they're pretty much, it's just a wash. They just give it to you, right? So they'll repair it, and it won't cost you anything, even if it's your fault, and even if you destroy the drone. So, that's a good thing, but it's only one, right? So that's why
first one's free, baby. First one's free.
and even the guys that I interviewed, so it was Chris Creekmer, Ryan Godwin, and Brandon Serge. They all have said it's not, if you're going to crash it, it is a matter of when. And we recently saw a crash that, I mean, it ended up really being the panic of the pilot a little bit. And these are things that are going to happen. That's why the insurance is so, it's so important, stupid important, really.
Yeah, that's great. You made that comment. Just being in drone insurance, it's not if, it's when. You could be flying for 20 years and have all these hours, and it's maybe not always a pilot error. It could be a malfunction of the equipment, and it happens, and it's going to happen absolutely at some point.
Yeah, so you've got the EMI issues, which is electromagnetic. I don't know why I am tongue-tied this evening. Electromagnetic interference, or EMP, electromagnetic pulses, which happen and can cause a disconnect between the drone and the controller, or cause it to go wonky. And as some guys will say, if your drone starts to toilet bowl, right, it's in dire straits. It's trying to find a signal, and it's that can be a serious issue where it can cause a lot of problems, right? Gene O'Neill is asking, is the drone coverage still subject to an annual audit for revenue and labor?
No. So no, that's going to be more on your workers' comp and different things like that. But the drone, no. What we would like, and it's not always provided, but especially on these type of drones, is if you're starting out and you have no experience flying these drones, you did like a week-long course, your rates are going to be higher at the beginning. If you after a year when your renewal comes up, what we want to know is your pilot hours. How many hours have you flown this drone in the last year? How many hours experience do you have? Because that could actually reduce your rate. It's going to make you a more qualified pilot. It's going to make you more insurable. And we want that information. But no, we're not going to be asking for, what your revenue and all that. That your CGL policy might ask that, but the drone side won't.
What if we flew it not exactly licensed?
Not covered. You're flying illegally, and you can get in big trouble with the FAA.
Oh, I gotta share this. You're talking about things that could happen with the drone, and I just have to share this with y'all that and this is obviously just pure recreational, playing with a drone, and we're out flying, and I'm out on the beach, and we're in the yellow house, that little yellow house that would be to the left-hand side of the screen. It's loading right now, and did not realize how the waves were getting it. And this was just my Mavic Pro on here. And, was going for that cool cinematic shot and how neat that was. And, what could happen. And I'm flying over these waves, and the waves are getting a little higher here. And I wasn't paying any attention to it. And then all of a sudden we get this right here. And that was a problem.
I wasn't ready for that one, Ray.
Yeah,
I thought I'd seen all those videos, but I didn't see that one.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Whoops.
Did you lose your drone, dude?
Huh? Believe it or not, that drone had just enough. It stopped. The camera stopped. Had just enough where it got up and came up, and literally, and once it got over the stand, I had zero control of it whatsoever. I mean, it was, and then bam, right into a pile of COs. And yeah.
So the other day when you told me it wasn't working correctly, you failed to mention.
Oh no, that was in 2021. That was April 5th. That was actually on my birthday, and that was 2 years ago.
Oh! I thought that was
old.
recently, and this was the reason that your drone wasn't working correctly.
Oh, dude, I've crashed like 3 of those things so far.
It happens.
I hope my wife isn't watching this thing, because we need 3 of them. Mm-hmm.
Okie dokie. So, if you ever look at hiring Ray, yeah.
Well, what do they call an expert? Is somebody that's made every mistake possible in a particular industry. So I'm going on drone expert. Is what I'm working on.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something that we're headed down that path with. So. So in a case like that, if you have the insurance on the drone, I assume that would be covered.
That would be if you had the whole coverage on it. Yeah, it's
Right.
going to cover you for if it flies away. You lose it in an ocean.
So you actually have a dumbassery rider on the.
Yeah, it's going to cover you if it's stolen. It'll cover you for everything. So up to whatever limits you put that replacement value at.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So far, a lot of the stories that I've heard about, drones and crashes and, things of that nature. And what I'm surprised, and I shared this with you earlier, what I'm surprised of is, I had put this in a couple of drone groups and they kicked it out and like, they don't want to hear it. And you're like, why would you not want to hear it? I mean, the reality is if you're out there and you're flying these things, even recreationally, like we were just talking about, Ray just gave an excellent point, right? He was flying along and a rogue wave came and grabbed his drone, but didn't sink it. It took off. And then Ray said when it got towards the sand and the beach, he couldn't control it. Well, imagine had there been, people on the beach and he couldn't control it. And then that recreational drone went down and, and hit somebody. And even though it's not the, it's say the plastic, propellers and maybe not the, the carbon fiber. So maybe it doesn't slice them open or whatever, but still gives them I'll even say it just scares them enough, right? It hits their kid, right? And it scares them enough to call an ambulance. The ambulance calls the, state troopers in and, life flight just because they feel like it, they're on an island, right? And, who's going to pay?
Exactly. And it comes back to who is responsible. So that's where insurance comes in. Now you can go on YouTube. I think I sent it through our office a few months back. You can Google drone accidents on YouTube, and it is crazy how many videos come up. But recreational, there's a video out there somewhere. A kid, someone's flying recreational at a park, loses control of the drone, and it hits a 2-year-old in the face and slices the kid's face open. And there you go. Now there's probably 5 stitches, upset parent. who's responsible for that? It's going to be the drone operator, and you're paying out of pocket for that, or insurance could pay for it. And then who knows if a parent's going to come after you and now sue you for, trauma and emotional, distress and all this other stuff that can go along with that. So
yeah. So you end up with a $500,000 lawsuit against you, and you're going to say, well, that's just stupid. That's ridiculous. That's not. Look, I live in Louisiana. I can tell you people file ridiculous lawsuits all the stinking time. I'm still involved in a stupid, ridiculous lawsuit kind of a thing, right? So, I mean, people do these things all the time, and it's you don't. I guess for me, I look at it this way: with as stupid cheap as it is, it's stupid not to do it. Especially if you're going to be out there doing it on a more regular basis. I would say, like in a case like with Ray. That's bringing something up. Somebody asked me to ask you this, and now it's hitting my brainwaves. And that is, can I call and say, I just want insurance for today?
You can. We, unfortunately, at BWI don't offer the pay as you go, but there are some carriers out there who do. AirMoto is one of them, where, you can get insurance for an hour, a day, a week, a month, or the whole year. We only insure on an annual premium. So our clientele that we focus and cater to are more of the businesses, right? So you're going to be flying on a regular basis. But yes, there are providers out there who can insure short term.
Yeah. So, and that would be important too, because like, let's say, for example, that you do buy a pressure washing drone, or you buy a drone for just, doing inspections on roofs or whatever the case may be. And now but you don't want to necessarily pay for an entire year's worth of policy. You could maybe go to one of these companies and say, hey, look, I'm going to fly today between, 3 and 5 PM, just looking for coverage. And from my understanding, it was, again, stupid cheap. So $25 to $40 is what I heard for that insurance for the day. That may or may not be the case. Don't hold us to it. But, in a case like that, I could really see where that's an important thing to know and be able to do, especially if you're going to in an area with a lot of people.
Yeah, a couple notes on that is these carriers they might have limitations on the type, what the drone use is. I know the smaller drones for sure, not a big deal. I would reach out and ask on the larger cleaning drones. They may not in that capacity, but it's great for when someone's just starting, right? And they don't have consistent jobs lined up, and they don't have the consistent work. It makes sense. But when you do get consistent, it financially makes more sense to have the annual policy, because that pay as you go over the term of the year, if you're very busy and needing it, a few times a week, could end up costing more in the long run. So it's great for, just starting out. I definitely recommend that, but definitely reach out, they might have limitations on what type of drones and uses that they can do that short term.
I expect there'd be probably a pretty heavy burden of proof to document that if you did have an accident, that it happened between this time and that time when you had, when you were actually, and God forbid you go over by 5 minutes or under by 5 minutes on there, you're probably going to have an issue on there, because let's face it, that's what insurance is there for, is to figure out how to not pay the insurance out if the person is violating the covenants of the insurance on there. So exactly. I tell a lot of people that this something that I had happen to me, and this was the first Mavic that I ever had. We were, and before they even required the Part 107 license to go back for a while on it. But we were doing a patio, and we were over a garage, the top part of a garage that was at the Department of Education here in Florida. And I'm a relatively new pilot, granted, and my DJI started saying magnetic interference. And I'm a man, I'm magnetic interference. I'm not worried about no stinking magnetic interference. And so I sojourn on with this, and I'm following my guys as there. I'm up there about 30 feet in the air, going down. This beautiful shot. As they're pressure washing, it starts beeping at me, and it literally took off, and it went up 20 foot and over about 60 foot, and smack, bang, right in the side of the Department of Education on about the 6th floor. I had zero control. There was literally nothing I could do. Whenever that drone decided it was gone, that drone was gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why, answering your question here, Stephen, don't insure him, Nicole. He's already been rejected, so it's not a problem.
Yeah. And so Gene asked the problem, do you have insurance for unlicensed recreational use?
We don't, but there are carriers, yes, out there, and Air Moto would be one. And it's, again, even more affordable, I think, for recreational. There are more limitations, obviously, what you can and can't do recreationally, but I recommend at least just having liability, right? If you can replace your drone on your own, at least liability is going to protect you in the case something happens, your drone goes rogue and hits someone, hurts something, breaks something that you're now responsible for. So we here at BWI, unfortunately, don't have any policies for recreational use only. All of ours, you have to be a licensed Part 107 pilot. But there are carriers out there, Air Moto. I'd look them up, airmoto.com, and they should be able to help you out.
I was so scared I was going to get caught up in this sailboat, which was like almost a mile away, that I was going over this river to go video the sailboat.
And that looks abandoned.
No, it was. This was after Hurricane Michael. A sailboat that had just been sitting there in the Apalachicola River that broke free from its moorings, and so sent it across the river to go out there and check it out. And I was so worried that I got some closer shots, and I'm like, I could just see all of a sudden a gust of wind and one of those sails breaking loose and wrapping up my drone in this thing, and taking it away from me forever and ever and ever. So
yeah,
but yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool.
But I mean, I'm assuming, if you were just recreational, I mean, that would be, where it'd be so important to use your drone. My DJI, I mean, we've been through a lot together. Like I said, I'm on about my 3rd one. So you could say, well, they've paid for themselves over the time, although they've paid for themselves in fun. But I'd still hate to go buy a new DJI. I mean, I think last time I saw the Mavics, they were what, 3,000 or something on there for the new ones. I mean, they're no longer cheap at all. So
yeah, some of them get quite expensive depending on where you're at with it. So yeah.
Now, are you going to ever see it? Do you ever see any potential issues with like Blue Cube or anything? Would y'all ever have a problem with a non-US based drone?
Yeah, so for us to insure a drone, it's got to be based in the US. So it has to be a US based drone. However, the policies we have, most of them will cover you worldwide. So if you're traveling abroad, you're going to, you'll be covered as long as you're following whichever country you're in rules and regulations of that drone.
Now,
so
you say, but it had to be a U.S. manufactured drone?
No, it doesn't. No, okay. It just needs to be based in the U.S. So whoever owns it, it has to be based in the U.S.
My question was, I mean, there's Chinese manufacturers out there, DJI. I mean, is there going to be a problem, insuring something, like that? And that you mentioned that about following the country's, protocols for it. As I've been studying more and more about the drone space, there are some countries that are like Morocco. You do not go into, I think it's Morocco. You do not go into Morocco with an undeclared drone because they will confiscate it from you at the airport
and behead you.
Yeah. Maybe, but you do not go in there without a drone that and think you're just going to go fly the drone around Morocco, because
I think that's going to even be more important when you're talking about doing like not necessarily flights. I mean, I guess, yeah, if you're flying in and it's in your luggage, but even on cruises and all that kind of stuff, some of the ports and all that, some of the places that you go, they're not drone friendly. And so,
well, you know, where it's so important for recreational guys to understand, you know, I mean, I remember being in, this is again 3 years ago, was up in the Smoky Mountains and we were watching the elk one afternoon, and I threw my drone up, and all of a sudden park rangers were looking around, and I had like two people walking towards me, and I was like, "Hello, officer, how are y'all doing?" And they're like, "Is that your drone?" "Yes, it is." "Bring it down right now. Right now, land it right here immediately." And I was like, "Okay, what's the problem?" It is illegal to fly a drone in a national park.
Yep.
You have to get a permit.
Now, wait a minute. That's not completely true, Ray. You can fly it in a national park. You cannot launch it or land it in a national park. So you can be outside of the national park, go up and fly into, right? But then you also, and don't hold me to all the rules and stuff that I'm talking, right? But then you also have to be, I think it's like 2,000 feet. I could be wrong on that number, but I think it's like 2,000 feet above the livestock and stuff, right?
Right.
So,
but then you might possibly be breaking into the Class A airspace.
It's like
you're not violating national park rules, but you've just broken a major FAA regulation.
Yeah.
I mean, this is where it's important for us to understand our regulations and abide by the rules, and you know, all of these things. And I've certainly have been guilty of, you know, and as I get more into, as I educate myself more on here, because this is something that's truly important to understand, because, you know, Nicole, would my drone be covered if I knowingly, willingly broke a rule like that? Like let's say, and I'm not asking you to do an underwriting judgment, because I understand you're not an underwriter, but if I flew my drone in a national park and it crashed and started a wildfire, is that something I'm covered for? Or does the underwriter say, no, you weren't supposed to be? And again, I'm not asking you for a binding answer, but what would your opinion be on that?
My opinion would be there's a good chance it would probably not be covered. So it's going to depend case by case, right? And there's some carriers out there who are a little more generous, where, you know, it's kind of not the norm in insurance, where they'll do anything to pay out,
Right.
where most insurance carriers that we're used to with like home and auto and that is they're looking for a reason not to pay. So some of the carriers we work with in drone are the opposite, but however, they're going to look at the whole picture, what happened, what was going on, and determine. But this is a great topic, is not only if you're traveling other countries, but like you're saying, a national park, and even cities and different municipalities and counties have specific rules, is you really need to know not only what the FAA rules and regulations are. Each town might have its own municipal codes and rules, and you have to be following all of those rules in order for your insurance to kick in. So wherever you're flying, you need to know the rules. So if you're, flying, you're from one area and you fly there almost all the time, that's fine. But say you're going on a trip, a vacation, you're Part 107 license, you fly commercially for work, you're going on a vacation, you're going to use it recreational, that's fine. You're covered. You're still Part 107 license. And you're going to another state or another city, you need to know what their rules and regulations are, because there's a good chance that they might have different rules than the town you're used to flying in. And you need to follow those along with the FAA rules as well.
So Rusty is asking on the daily coverage. He's saying daily coverage could be an alternative for low drone use. Are there different rates based on the weight of the drone? Example, 249 grams versus a larger commercial drone.
Yes. So typically you're going to look at any drone 55 pounds or less is kind of all categorized in one. And then once you get over that 55-pound threshold, you're going to have a waiver, FAA waiver for drones over 55 pounds. And then that's going to be based on a lot of, what's your experience, what type of drone, what's your intended use. that you're using for. But yeah, you're going to see the rates increase. And even on some of these, under 55 pounds, depending on your intended use, that could adjust the rates as well. So, if you're flying for construction and I'm doing oil pipelines and there's nobody around, it's in the middle of nowhere, you're going to have probably a lower rate than someone who is flying a small drone, around events, right? Festivals, events where there's a lot of people around. And then going into that, if you're flying events, are you flying over people or not? I would say almost all carriers are not going to insure you for flights over people.
Yeah. Really? And that's where you see them actually, used a lot is at these little street festivals. And I was at a homecoming game not long ago, and there were 2 or 3 drones just zooming, back and forth and filming the crowd. And part of me said, boy, what if one of those got loose and just, kind of came down? It's scary,
Go ahead, Nicole.
Well, that's an issue that, the drone insurance world's having right now is there's so many people out there recreationally that don't know the rules, that don't know Part 107, that are flying over people. But the Part 107 rules are very specific to what drones. There's only one drone really that can, or not one drone. There is only one drone category 2 or 3 right now that is approved to fly over people. And we have a lot of people with a Mavic that have, a Mavic 3 Pro, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to fly over people at concerts. We're like, no, there's no coverage. You don't know the FAA rules and regulations. So if you have a drone 250 grams or less, including your battery, including, whatever propeller guards, all rotating parts have to be covered. With that added on there, still has to be under the 250 grams to qualify for a category 1 operation. And even then you have to, the insurance carriers ask, are you flying over people? There is one carrier that I write with that will do it, but your premium is going to be a lot higher than not flying over people. I would say all but one.
Even if you have a waiver, correct? It's still not
even
covered.
if you have a waiver. Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. I wasn't flying over people. The wind took it there. Yeah.
Let's see that beautiful bean footage. Yeah. So, Gene, before I have her answer your question, I'm going to jump to another one. But go ahead. You were going to say something, Mr.
Yeah, and the underwriters, they look at your business. They'll Google your business. They look at your websites. They see the videos on there, and they're like, well, what are they doing? They'll come back with more questions, and sometimes they'll just decline to quote. They're like, I don't know. This is kind of we're seeing this on the website, and we're getting different answers. Like we just don't even want to deal with this.
So Gene is asking about, let's hear some horror stories. But before we do that,
hold on. I want to point. Hold on 1 second. I gotta mention this because Nicole just mentioned this. So the underwriters go to the website. Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Okay. So what have we said before, Doug, about underwriters going to, and you just heard it here, verified by an independent insurance agent? Because there's tons of people, Nicole, that in this industry that like to run around and put pictures of themselves not harnessed up, washing a roof or being in a lift without a harness on. And we tell people all the time, first off, you're an idiot for not wearing a harness up there. But second off, do not advertise your idiocy on your website. Now you've really got a problem out there.
Yeah. And that's what we're looking at, right? Most of the applications, we're taking your word for what you're saying, but we have to verify. We try our best to verify that what you're saying is what you're doing, right? And because we get it all the time. I mean, drones are evolving very fast. The uses for drones are evolving quickly. So we're trying to keep up with that. And, advertisement, websites, all of that helps us, verify. Yeah, they're doing what they're saying, or I don't know. Look, they got this drone flying over all these people, and they're saying, no, we're not going to fly over anyone. It kind of makes us second guess.
So Dave is asking, if you crash a drone on company time, this is actually a very good question, by the way. If you crash a drone on company time, does the insurance require a drug and alcohol test from the pilot? Is that still considered a DUI?
That's a great question. Not that I'm aware of. I haven't had this come across. This is a great question. But if it happens on company time and you're under the influence, more so, what is the company going to do? That's what we're going to want to know. And then this is kind of one of those gray areas where, depending on the situation, depending on the claim, will they cover it? Again, there's a good chance it's not going to be covered because, Part 107, you're under the influence while flying a drone.
Well, I think the question, though, is...
Will it be a DUI? I don't know.
I don't even think that's the question. And Dave, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think the question is, let's say, for example, Ray is out there flying his drone above the water. The wave comes up, grabs the drone. I file a claim against it. Does the insurance company then come back and say, okay, great, before we pay this claim, we need a drug and alcohol analysis from the... Because that's something that would happen, as an example, we know somebody who had an employee in a crash, and that employee was ejected from the car and he passed away. And there were some, investigations as far as that was concerned, and I've had employees where they get hurt. And the very first thing that I'm asked is, okay, did you send them for a drug test? Did you send them for an alcohol screening? So is that that's not something that the drone manufacturers are asking for?
Yeah. So
insurance.
So not typically, right? You crash the drone, just the drone's damage. We're not going to request that. Now, say the drone crashes, injures somebody, and most likely the company is going to have a policy that is going to go send their employee to get a test, and then that's going to be reported on all parties. It's going to be reported to the drone insurance, the CGL policy, the workers' comp, all of that. So in that case, that could, definitely decline a claim if that employee, we're not going to give a DUI. We're not law enforcement, but could that happen? I mean, potentially.
But you're not going to force a drug or alcohol test.
No.
So Rusty is saying, as an example, I want to use a 249 gram for plant and property pictures, before and after pictures, marketing pictures versus a Pellex drone for wash services. So that would be covered, kind of thing, I guess, is what he's asking. For doing the part-time thing, right? I think that's what he's asked, the daily coverage.
The daily coverage, yeah. I mean, I don't write that, so I couldn't tell. But yeah, if you have a drone in that capacity, if you're meeting the requirements, and if I remember, is this for recreational? I know recreational has a weight limit. And I know.
I think he's saying he wanted to use one that was less than 250.
Oh yeah,
like his before and after pictures. So I think what Rusty's saying is, I'm basically going to have two different drones, two different usage. I'm going to have a heavy lift drone for actually washing the building, but now I'm going to also have a small drone because I'm not going to go and put this big bird up in the air and take pictures with it whenever I've got something, much lighter and nimble. And yeah.
Well, I think we talked about that during the interview. So let me bring that around a little bit full circle here. And that is, okay, so I'm flying my Pellex drone and I am washing the side of a building. At the same time, I have a second pilot and he's flying a small drone that is videoing for marketing purposes. Are both of those drones covered flying at the same time with two separate pilots?
As long as you have both drones listed on your policy, or you have a blanket policy that's covering, up to 2 drones or more, it's 55 pounds or less for if you do the blanket. So either have both drones listed, so both drones are covered, and then both pilots have to have a valid Part 107 on the policies that I write. So yes, they would be covered if they meet those requirements.
And the reason I bring that up, Rusty, and Ms. Nicole can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I would do a full-time policy on the big drone and a part-time policy on the small drone, because as I remember our conversation before, Ms. Nicole, the policy was the same amount for both drones. It didn't matter. You just had to have them listed. So for me, I would just list out all the drones that I have, add a drone, take away a drone, whatever the case may be. And then that way I know I'm covered.
Yeah, and the pricing is going to, be reflective of the type of drone you have. So if you have a small drone, that rate's going to be a lot less than the larger drone. So, and you really only want one drone policy, right? Carriers are not going, they don't allow you to have two policies. They don't allow you to have a full-time policy and a short time. You really need to have everything on one policy, because what's going to happen in the event of a claim, they're going to say, that's when you get the finger pointing at insurance, right? Yeah. Like sense. Who's the insured on this drone? So you need one drone policy and have all your drones on that one policy.
So to be respectful of your time, we're almost at an hour here, but let's hear some of the horror stories of claims. I'm sure you have many. Also, what is the most common claim filed?
All right, I would say the most common, I'll start with common claim. The most common claim is damage to the drone. So whether it's a flyaway, I've had only one claim of stolen equipment, and then the majority is going to be either user error or I guess malfunction of the equipment. So, and that is probably 95% of my claims is damage to the drone. I had one get run over in a parking lot by a motorized wheelchair. So that was an interesting one. He was in a empty parking lot, went back to his car, just landed his drone to change the battery. No one was in the parking lot. And he went to his car to grab another battery. And as his back was turned, a motorized wheelchair ran over the drone.
How fast was that freaking wheelchair?
Right? So the most common is flyaways. I've had quite a few on boats and lost control signal and went into the ocean, river, or lake. So those have been the most common.
Yeah, because what fool would ever use their drone at the beach?
Horror stories. So I haven't had any big horror stories where drone versus person, but the industry with underwriters, we have meetings and they'll let us know sometimes what's going on. And I've heard some claims of light show drones. There's one, actually, you guys can Google it. It was in Vegas. I think it was at Caesar's Palace, maybe. Their light show, and the safe place, if there was a malfunction, was up on the roof. And so one of the little drones, and these are like tiny, tiny little drones. And I always get insureds being like, well, the drone's so small, it can't hurt anyone. Well, you'd be surprised when it's moving 50 miles an hour in the air and hits someone in the face. But anyways, one of the drones fell out of sync, it lost connection. And when it fell, all the other drones went to where it was programmed, the safe spot. And as the drones were moving, that drone that fell took like 3 or 4 other drones, knocked them out as well. And one drone came down and hit a spectator in the face, in her nose. And she was claiming a vision loss and other things. So there's a massive lawsuit going on about that. So that's one. There's another TMZ one where there's a model on a rock. These are, you guys can YouTube all of these. Model on a rock, and there's a drone that's kind of in front of her getting pictures, and the drone, I don't know if it was the pilot, I don't know if it lost control, but it went right in her face and gave her a black eye. And she was fortunately okay, but she's a model now. She has a black eye for how many weeks she can't work. So that's a claim right there. There's another video circling out there. No claim on this one, but there was a drone flying over a concert, and they are launching fireworks off as the drone is flying through the fireworks. So, I mean, that's something that the underwriters are going to look at. Are there pyrotechnics if you're flying at an event over people? Because those fireworks, all it has to do is hit that drone, and here comes this drone spiraling down to hit someone in the crowd. So, those are the biggest ones. You can go on YouTube and Google drone versus people, and there's going to be a ton of stuff that pops up. And
that's scary.
Yeah.
I want to go Google drone into the sea now.
yeah, you probably see it.
I'll just send it to you.
Yeah.
I was actually looking here, and I can't find it on a different computer tonight. But usually this Mac is so good about doing that. But, Doug was talking about, we were just at a visit to one of the drone manufacturers, and I had my drone up and was getting video of their drone flying at that point. So, and I've seen other companies out there marketing it like what they're using their camera drone to photograph the other drone working out there.
Yeah.
Too,
the biggest claims in cleaning drones is going to be, and the biggest issue I think the insurance industry is having right now with cleaning drones and agricultural, like spraying drones. The biggest issue right now is the claims on the chemical liability for agriculture. Is there's a lot of people right now that are going out and they're buying this equipment and they have no experience. And we're seeing low experienced pilots having just a lot of issues crashing the drones within the first month or so. They, get a couple hours under the belt. They think they're good, and then damage to the drone. So that's the biggest thing. So that's why it's important as you increase your hours and you get more experience to let us know, because that's going to make you a more insurable drone pilot, and it's going to help with your rates as well. When you go out and spend $40,000-$50,000 on a cleaning drone and you have no experience, we're going to want to know what training are you doing, because we can insure you, yes, but it's going to cost more because there's a higher likelihood of a claim.
And in all seriousness, though, because if I've not used it for business and I've not gotten my 107, but I still have hours and hours and hours of experience on there. I mean, can I use the logs from my DJI and say, look, I've not needed my 107 because I've not done any professional work with this, but no, look, I really have, flown for, 20 cumulative hours, 50 cumulative hours here. I mean, is that going to help me?
Yeah, that's relevant. That's going to help because you have experience flying a drone versus 0 time. So we're going to we want to know, what is your total time flying any drone?
Right.
And then what is your time in that specific make and model for these larger drones? Because there is a learning curve, and especially when you're spraying something out of it and knowing the wind and when you're spraying and all of that. So there's definitely a learning curve to the spraying drones, but it will help. Yeah. If you've been flying, for the last 4 years and you have hundreds of hours flying drones, that's going to help it, of course.
All right. Well, good. That actually does my heart.
Well, Mr. Nicole, anything you want to add, anything you want to throw out there, and tell us how to get in touch with you if we need to.
Yeah. Just if you have questions about anything, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be happy to answer any questions, right? That's the whole point, is I'm here to answer questions so you can make a decision. So best way to reach me is you can call me directly. My direct line is 949-272-0145, or you can shoot over an email. And my email is Nicole, it's Nicole .Royer, ROYER @bwifly.com.
That's awesome.
And that's Bravo Whiskey India. Bravo Whiskey India.
Bravo Whiskey India for fly.
BWIFly.com.
Fly.com.
BWIFly.com. Yeah. And just so you guys know, because it hasn't been mentioned, but you can go right on the website, fill out a form, submit it, and get an estimate from them, right there. It's not a big deal. So,
yeah. And don't hesitate. Everyone wants a price without giving any information. Like, none of your information goes anywhere. It comes to me. I look at it. I'll call you back, ask you additional questions if we need it, or you get an instant quote. And, if you don't need it at the time, just tell me and we'll push it on until you need it.
I'm going to throw out a what if, okay?
Uh-huh.
What if I went and took a drone that wasn't necessarily designed for the purpose that it wound up being used for, and I add an attachment to my drone? Would that be a covered drone?
So it depends. It's going to, again, depend on the situation. So does the drone fall under that, you have an insurance policy? Is it for a drone under 55 pounds with that payload or attachment? Is it still under the 55 pounds? So most likely, yes, it's going to be covered. What we do on the application is we want your intended use so we can properly get an idea of what you're going to be using the drone for. It's not necessarily going to increase the rate based on your intended use. We just need to gather more information. If you are using the drone for cleaning, most likely that's going to increase, just the type of drone is going to increase the rate a little bit. But if you're also going to use the drone for, or other drones on your policy for filming, cinematography, real estate, construction, list as many things as you're going to potentially use it for. That's okay, because that gives us an idea. Hey, here's all the intended uses that we're using. And then down the road, maybe you add something else, and that's fine. But you still want to be falling in the guidelines of the policy, whatever policy you have. So if the drone is under the 55-pound mark and you're adding payload, you want to make sure that with the payload, the battery, all of that, it's still under that 55 pound.
Right. So let's say that I took a heavy lift drone. Let me try to give it. I took a heavy lift cinematography drone, and I wanted to turn it into a spray painting drone.
You can do it if it functions. I would let your broker know, whoever that is, so they can note the file. And what's going to change is, do you have, is it under 55 pounds, or by, manipulating that drone, is that drone with the extra parts it needs now over 55 pounds? If that's the case, we're going to need that part, that FAA waiver for the drone over 55 pounds. So if you're really close to that threshold of the weight limit, you really want to make sure that you're not, because as soon as you're over that weight limit and you don't have that waiver, you're not going to be covered. Okay. So yeah, I would note it. A lot of times for me, people say, hey, I'm doing this now. I'll let the underwriter know. They note the file in case something happens. It's documented and it's there.
Okay. Well, gosh, thank you so much for your time. And we're going to go ahead and end the live. Doug, what do you got?
No, that was it. I was just saying thank you, and peace out to everybody. Appreciate you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. And Merry Christmas to those of you that are out there.
Yeah, and hold on, we had a last question come in, Rusty. Doug, what is the weight of the Apelix?
Oh, you're hitting me with a question I can't answer right off the bat. I do know that. I can look it up real quick, Rusty, and I'll get back to you with it. But yeah, I'm if I say the number, which I'm almost positive of what it is, but if I say the number, I'm going to be wrong, and I want it to be the precise number because that's important. So I'll let you know about that, Rusty.
And that's right. Merry Christmas, everybody. We are coming this. We won't be on next Monday. It will be Christmas. So don't expect to see us. And Merry Christmas, all. And Nicole, stick around for 1 second, if you will. But I am going to go ahead and end our live.
See y'all.